Hello, this is the Torg Eternity Delphi Council Debriefings, where the storm has a name. We are your hosts, Leamon, Jay, and Mark, and today we will be continuing the Fires of Ra. Act 1, we had got through Scene 3, so today we will do Scene 4 and Scene 5 to finish up the act. But before we do that, we do want to suggest, if you want, write us at torgdcd@gmail.com and give us your stories. If you've had some Fire of Ra stories out there, crazy things or fun things that have happened in your group, or some things that you might have got to that you felt were broke and you couldn't get through and might have caused you some problems, or if you're planning on game mastering Fires of Ra and have read some of this stuff and wondering how to get past or through different situations, you can direct that all towards us, and we'll read your email. We'll answer questions. As long as it doesn't get too long, we'll read your adventures and things like that. Because I always think that it's fun to listen to how different people go through the same adventure and have different fond and bitter memories and different things, because every group is going to do it different. So having said that, the end of Act 3, which we all agreed was a great act of save the damsel from the bomb on top of the turning restaurant, was fun. So you rescue Shafira, and I believe she tells you an info dump at her hidden office at the Cairo Clarion, which is kind of like an underground newspaper. And basically, you're the Storm Knights are trying to get these canopic jars because they think it should have something in them. The one at the museum didn't, so now they are going to look for other canopic jars and try to find the MacGuffin. But scene number 4, you ought to be in pictures. Jay, do you have any thoughts on this scene?
This is a nice... It's a weird hybrid scene, I guess, because in theory it can either be a social scene or a espionage scene. The idea is that you are going into into Dreamland, which is their sort of Hollywood idea, and you're going into the studio lot where they're filming this movie, and the canopic jars are being used as props, just for extra authenticity. So you can either sneak in, and then you have to avoid guards every once in a while until you can find the appropriate spot, which requires some streetwise and things like that. Or if you're my group, they just barged right in the front door. And as I mentioned in the last week, one of the characters had the famous perk. So she was a famous streamer, and basically she would stream herself killing demons. Was the idea. But so they came in and basically kind of pretended like one of them was her agent, and she was there to maybe film something or check it out, and asked for a tour. I think a mistaken identity card may have been played. So they basically found the way without any kind of conflict, made their way, and then the interesting thing that you find is there's only one jar present. So now they have to figure out what happened to the other one. And it turns out that, what's his name again? Mr. Faisal, the head actor, has taken one to his club just as a prop. And I had also made sure to seed in a few just offhand mentions of his movies prior to this. They already knew the name, but I don't think any of them actually remembered, to be honest. But it added an extra little thing. And then one of the members of the Retribution League, of course, arrives right when you have discovered this. And a bunch of Fat Cat Studio execs, they got intimidated away, and there was a fight with Brickhouse Branco. That is his name, right? Brick Knuckle
Brick
Branco.
Knuckle
Brick
Blanco.
Knuckle.
Knuckle Branco. But even though he was pretty strong, Zoe was a big old tank, so she could take it. And they basically beat the hell out of him, and he ran away. And they left before the cops could show up. So it was a nice, quick in and out. They leveraged some contacts, and then had a little bit of a fight. Wasn't too long, but it also was nice to introduce the whole Dreamland concept to them as well.
Mark, your thoughts on You Ought to Be in Pictures, Scene 4.
So there are a lot of settings or places or scenes in Fires of Ra that it depends on which you've done first. If you've played with the Delphi missions from the individual acts from the Delphi missions book, you've seen some of these places, or you're going to see a lot of these places again. If you haven't messed with any of that, there are a lot of places, Dreamland is one of them, there are a lot of places in Torg Eternity that reoccur. Dreamland's going to show up again. The Anubis Club, which is coming up, is going to show up in that same mission. That's the Serial Gambit by Greg Gordon, which is a fantastic mission. If you haven't done that, you should do that mission. It fits in. Anyway, there are a number of places in there that you should give life to in your game, because they come up again, and if your players are used to it or have seen it before, they'll be, oh cool, hey, that was nice, and it'll give them a feel like the world is real. When we did this for the streaming, everybody's trying to figure out how to get into Dreamland because it has that big wall and everything, and they dropped a contact card to get through the gate. But this is it's like, I don't need to know how they're getting in the gate. Someone will figure something out. And sure enough, they did. They like, oh, here's how I want to do it. And they got kind of a tour where they peeled away and found the building where they were at and used their stealth and lockpicking to get in. It was kind of I don't know, and I don't want to say an afterthought scene, but it kind of happened very quickly where they got in there and they found the stuff, and then the studio executives show up with brick knuckles, and in our case, Branco realized he couldn't get the jar because we had a rocket ranger who swooped in, grabbed the jar, and flew it up to a catwalk. And Brick Knuckles Branco he's a melee striker. That's his thing. He gets in there and he beats you with his fists. And when it was way up there, he's like, I got nothing. And so they just split and wrote it off. So it was kind of an anticlimactic scene for us.
So I enjoyed this scene because of Brick Knuckle Branco. I did want to point out his stats in the back of the book on page 104. He has a pretty nice toughness without armor at a 16, which is pretty darn cool. And under his equipment, he has special boxing gloves, and it has it as a strength +4, which would make it a 19. But he also does have the Prowler perk, which says that it stacks with everything.
Brawler?
Or sorry, not Prowler. Brawler. So it's a 21 damage, which is pretty tough. And like and unlike Jay's group, I guess, I had a player whose character was an Isle Berserker who had a lot of the I take shock, and I had bonus BDs to damage, and if I get wounded, I add more points to damage, all of those stuff that we talked about when we were talking about the perk categories. And so we also did have a flyer, and I kind of preempted the flyer of let's completely circumvent the wall by tying a rope and the flyer fly over and tie off the rope and we climb over. That when they pulled up in their car to the studio, Brick Knuckle Branco was right outside of it, and I wanted him to dent the car, like the hood or something, to kind of show his strength. And I exploded, and it did enough like wounds to the car to disable the car. So he basically walked up as they're swerving into the parking space and stopping, and he's standing there and just brings both hands up and smashes into the hood and completely destroys the engine block. And everybody then was scared, because he starts off with a really, really good strength, and then I rolled so well, it did the damage. So even the couple of melee people were put off a little bit, and we're like, hey guys, taunt him, do something, make him vulnerable, make him stymied so he doesn't hit us, that type of stuff. They did end up hurting him enough for him to flee, but I just love the way it worked in my group, being I not on purpose but accidentally rolled so high that what I wanted to happen even was more forceful.
Yeah.
And then it kind of made my group just kind of take a step back, because at this point they were plowing through everything, and anything that could get my group, when I was playing this, to give pause was a good moment. But yeah, you find out that the canopic jar here doesn't have anything. You get led for the missing canopic jar to be in the last call at the Anubis Club, and then we get into some more shenanigans at the Anubis Club at scene 5.
But just to be clear,
sure.
The way you find that out is that the note that's pinned to Faisal's door tells you that the canopic jar, that the production company that needs these jars to make the picture happen, understands he's taken it to his club, and that's not acceptable. They want him to return it.
Right.
So you read the note that they've pinned to his door, and that's how you figure out where to go. It's not, there's no hidden roll, there's no any, it's there. So you can't have, as long as you enter the studio, you will find the note.
Right. It's a, hey, you took the prop, and prop means property of the studio. Bring it back. So then the Storm Knights can look at that and say, oh, okay, we know where the canopic jar is. So they go to the Anubis Club, which is another...
So new scene.
A new scene, a new...
Get your cards.
Club.
Dramatic scene.
And it is dramatic. It is Nile Empire dominant. The dramatic scenes do shift things to be slightly in favor of the villains, whereas the standard scenes that have come previously are slightly in favor of the Storm Knights. And then there's this neat little scene. So, Jay, your thoughts on last call at the Anubis Club?
So this scene is probably what I was looking forward to the most when preparing to run this, because it's very reminiscent of the beginning of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Yes.
The idea is they arrive at the club, no weapons, by the way, which when people are cyborgs is, less of an issue, but so they manage to get in, and they're looking around for him. They can't find this guy anywhere until a lounge singer comes out and, of course, starts singing. And I believe I actually had the music cue for the song, and I was playing it while they were looking and doing streetwise rolls to talk to people and find out where he is. And then he comes out with Lady Hourglass. And so it took this long for my group. They weren't as quick as Mark's, but at this point, someone played a star-crossed romance Cosm card, which is a villain falls for one of the heroes for the rest of the act, and they gain 2 possibilities, which they may spend from. And you keep adding possibilities each time one of them grants the other special treatment or lets them escape. And this became a running thing, and we basically kept it throughout the whole adventure, not just the act, right? It became very important much later on, but the problem is it's been so long now that for the life of me, I can't remember who it was that had the star-crossed romance with them. It might have been Zoe. Pretty sure it wasn't Akrik the Idinos. It might have been Oswald, the apothecary. But for reasons which will become apparent later, I don't think it was. And Jack was crazy, so it's probably Zoe. I don't remember. But either way, the players see this, and just then, for some reason, even though Lady Hourglass apparently has things in control, like under control with her mind mesmerizing powers with the actor, Hooded Cobra just busts in, grabs the lounge singer with a ray gun to her head, and tells people to. Tells Lady Hourglass, throw me the jar, let's go. And of course I played, the Hooded Cobra music when he got onto the stage, like hard cut of the actual singing, and then dun dun dun. And so the players were like, oh no, this guy. And then when she throws the jar, he drops it and it goes spinning down into the crowd, and then the crowd starts running all over the place. And it's supposed to be chaos, and people are kicking the jar, and it's basically like a DSR/chase to try to get the jar before Hooded Cobra can. And in mine, I'm trying to remember the specifics, but I believe they actually got it. They went and they basically beat the living hell out of Hooded Cobra right away to free Cleopatra, who is the lounge singer. And when they did that, what's her name? Shafira Azar. Yeah, Shafira Azar basically escorted Cleopatra outside, and Lady Hourglass gave a look to her new paramour and escorted the actor out as well. So they all went out the front, and the rest of this, the players got the jar relatively quickly, and Hooded Cobra just should have been dead, I think, but his goons carried him out the kitchen, and then there was a bit of a chase, but ultimately he got away out on the street because it took them a while to get a vehicle. If memory serves, actually, I believe Nafty was outside, so they had to go get in Nafty's car and chase him, but by then it was too late. But either way, they had got the jar, they were successful, and they saved Cleopatra, so it gave them some possibilities. Not that it mattered, because it was the end of the act. Anyways. But it was fun, it worked really well. I just thought it was going to be like this really epic sort of chase DSR thing with the canopic jar bouncing around everywhere. But that part ended up being done relatively quickly. It was the more dramatic part was just Hooded Cobra getting cold-cocked during his speech and getting dragged away, and then the other characters sort of making sure the civilians were okay, kind of going that Nile Empire way. So I still think it was a nice end for the Crime City act, though.
Mark, your thoughts on Last Call at the Anubis Club?
Okay, so I had high hopes for this scene as well. And I will start out by saying that this scene is in the top 3, potentially the number 1 role-playing event I have ever participated in. It was that good for us. And I'm not, the people that were involved, Leamon was there, will back me up on this. So they started off, somebody was famous and bribed their way into the club, so they kept their gear, including weapons, because they avoided a search because they're the entourage, right? And when Lady Hourglass shows up, she instantly mind controls. We had a Rocket Ranger with us. Instantly mind controls the Rocket Ranger because Nile Empire. So that makes sense, right? Mike, who's playing the Rocket Ranger, I tell you, you're mind controlled now. You're on the bad guy's side. Here are your marching orders. And he leaned into it like it was everything. It was so great. I mean, So the canopic jar starts the DSR chase, whatever thing going on, but he's all about trying to get the jar for her, and he's spending his possibilities. And we had a negator in the group, and Yaren, played by Robert, is canceling Rocket Ranger's possibilities instead of Hooded Cobra's rocket possibilities, because he's trying to get the jar, as Hooded Cobra is like, well, maybe I don't have to do anything at all. Cosm cards show up. We jump to that wipe out all. We had a whole bunch of mob goons that were there that just got taken out. And then Crag, our dwarven striker, runs up to Hooded Cobra, and he gets a glory on his attack and crushes Hooded Cobra with 5 wounds that he then fails to soak, and fails his. They didn't know this, but he failed his
defeat test.
Defeat test. Thank you. He failed his defeat test, and his, just like Jay's table, his goons haul his lifeless body out because he shows up later. Because I'm like, I don't want to replace Hooded Cobra because he's just that much fun. They didn't capture his body, whatever, and the goons take it out. And so to me, that's very Nile Empire. He gets to come back, but they just whacked him, and everybody turns on Rocket Ranger, and then Crag hit Hooded Cobra with 5 wounds. He gloriously hit Rocket Ranger to knock him out, and Rocket Ranger's going. I mean, Mike was going all in to dick over the party, and he was doing a really good job. And they were about to lose the canopic jar, and Crag just whack and knocks him out, and that's where the scene ends. There, it was Mike's play of a mind-controlled Storm Knight was absolutely fantastic. It was so much fun.
I'll add to that as a player, and I believe we might have talked about this in a previous episode, where a lot of times there isn't a lot of player versus player, or people really dislike being mind controlled. This went well because us other players, we understood what was going on, and we weren't mad at Mike at doing his job because he was playing it very, like his character would do, and we got on board. But yeah, we were at a point where it was, are we gonna actually get this? Because the Storm Knight, are we gonna knock him out? Are we gonna possibly kill our companion? And it leaned into the whole thing that we discussed last episode of us saying, oh, you're actually a bad guy. Oh, you're actually a bad guy. Not realizing he had the dark past, that he was the bad guy. And that was an ongoing thing for this entire adventure until that was revealed. And we were just like, everything that we brought up now makes perfect sense. Like, you are using 45 Colts and you do not have the firearm skill. What did you do? Forget when you're making the character?
That hasn't come up yet.
Right. It's just it's just like, but this was like the first thing with us as players, just kind of like ribbing Mike, because we got into it and it was a blast. It was fun. Afterwards, us a little in character and a little out of character. Oh yeah, you're just one of them. You're just you're a stormer pretending to be a Storm Knight, and how it progressed. But this was like one of those main points. As a game master, I will say this, and it's probably because, as Jay said, it's a chase / DSR. I enjoyed it. I had Lady Hourglass mind controlled one of my players. He didn't do the all out. He did the what I would probably consider a normal player reaction, who doesn't want other players to get upset at him doing dinky little things or trying to fight it every round. Do I have to spend a possibility? And I'm not going to spend a possibility. I'm not going to use cards. But they had the nice chasing the jar around. And then Hooded Cobra did succeed in taking it and getting away, which was something we didn't talk about that I'm going to bring up. As soon as this chase jar thing happens, then there's a chase immediately after, where the Storm Knights, like the Hooded Cobra, like kind of takes off. He might have the actress Cleopatra or whatever. He might have her as a hostage, and then the Storm Knights jump into another car and they take off. And I had it all set up where I was doing this on a VTT and had my little car, icons and stuff. And after the original chase, I was just like, no, the tires are shot out. We're not doing a back-to-back chase. That's how I did it as a game master. Feel free to do it as your own. So, Jay, did you have the second chase in your game?
I did, but they started because it took them a while to get a car because they had to go around to get to Nafty. And then Nafty was actually a better driver than them, but he couldn't spend possibilities. So I had Hooded Cobra's goons start like 2 steps ahead, and then they just got it first. So I just said that the traffic got in the way and they weren't able to follow him. So it was, I guess, kind of anticlimactic, but it was kind of funny to like think of all of them sitting in this cab like go go go, and then Nafty's like, I need this cab, but
it's my job.
Meanwhile, Hooded Cobra's unconscious in his car, and Lady Hourglass just sort of wandered off. Like she actually went with the actor and his entourage, so basically took over that little clique and escaped on her own.
Okay.
She wasn't actually with Hooded Cobra because she went out the other exit. In the adventure, it mentions if it looks like they're about to catch him, that he'll like throw Lady Hourglass out of the car and they have to stop or run her over, and then she'll spill all the beans, which is like another way. In fact, I would say a better way of getting all the information leading to the next act than what they actually use. But which is just you go back to the Clarion and the Suleiman there. It's like, oh, I found all this stuff. It's like, okay. But yeah, so for that kept Lady Hourglass was still alive and well. Branko survived, and Hooded Cobra was beaten up but not dead because he was just punched really hard. And I think also basically taken out in one shot. Like it was the same kind of situation. So that kind of set up the Hooded Cobra being really cheesed at these characters specifically.
Mark, the second chase, the chase after the chase.
So we didn't in the streaming version, we didn't have the second chase because Hooded Cobra got beamed and totally taken out. So and then when Crag knocked out Rocket Ranger, I think he was doing a really good job, and the question was, are we really going to lose this jar because he's going to get it and take it and give it to the bad guys? And then Crag goes, oh hell no, and he knocks him out and they get the jar. Lady Hourglass escaped. Because Hooded Cobra failed his defeat test and all that, I'm like, okay, he went down. They got the jar. We're not doing the chase. We don't have to. In one of the other fights, though, or in one of the other tables when I ran it, absolutely went the way that the book kind of laid it out, which was you fight, and then Hooded Cobra takes Cleopatra and escapes with the jar, and then you have to chase him. And if you win the chase, he throws Lady Hourglass out of the car with the canopic jar. Here's where we run into a hiccup. The book assumes that you're going to do it as written, in that you go after Hooded Cobra escapes with Lady Hourglass, and you chase and you succeed at the chase, and he throws Lady Hourglass out so that he gets away, and you get the next clue, which is to go to Abkamorna, which is where you need to be for Act 2. Well, we just detailed a bunch of situations where how do you drop that nugget if you don't do it as written? And for me, because we didn't do the chase at all, and because they took out Hooded Cobra, when he fell, he dropped the clue. And his goons were more interested in getting his body out than they were the information. And so I gave them the information based on what he dropped, because when he falls, you notice they dropped this map thing, whatever. Because there is a on page 19, there's a sidebar about the secret map as well, which that comes into play later on, which is a bonus that you can or can't give them. If you may or may not give them if you want to. It comes into play at a later act, which I'll leave that alone. Let Leamon discuss that if he wishes. But I'm interested in how Jay managed to give them the Abkamorna clue.
Oh, it's actually like right after we're in Aftermath, where it says they go back to the Clarion, and Suleiman took the liberty of doing some more digging and uncovered all this information.
Oh, so the info dumped it from the Clarion contact. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
but I think Lady Hourglass is a much better, narrative way to give that information.
Right. I would agree that that's a good thing. That if Hooded Cobra throws her out, and then the party stops, picks her up, and however, persuade, intimidate, interrogate, however you want to do it, to do that.
Don't
do that back. To get that information. That's pretty cool. My group, I didn't have either. I just had them he took the jar and went off in the airport, and the airplane took off, and the party was like, oh, okay, yeah. And then later on, another interesting thing appeared where there was a shift in shock troopers in an area. So it was almost like we failed this mission. Here's a new mission. And they went into a new mission, quote unquote, that was connected.
Surprise, same mission.
So it was I like doing that every once in a while. And I've talked about other games that I've done. I don't always see where the Storm Knights need to succeed every single time. It can be fun, yes, but if you bring some failures into it, then it makes those successes to me even more really heartfelt and energy of yes, if you succeed everything, then every success is the normal. If you fail sometimes, then those successes are a little more
it can
visceral.
Build character too.
Well, when you care about it more, when you care about it more, it becomes risky because you've failed before, and you might fail at this one too. So, we got to pull out all the stops because you care about this one.
Right. So that's what I did. So I didn't do anything that the book suggested. I just let Hooded Cobra escape. A little time passes. The party gets word. Because, like I said, in my personal home game, I don't have a Delphi Council, but I have a Circle of Knights, and one of the Storm Knight groups out there is a group that basically they're the border knights. They look at the borders and they have contacts to figure out what's going on, and they're like, okay, a bunch of these shock troopers are going to this dig site. Things are weird. Okay, you failed that mission. Here's a new mission, and that new mission just happens to be connected. But they when we get into Act 2, they didn't know that until close to the very end, which was then made, and when we get into that act and we get to the end, then I can explain that better. But it was a very powerful moment happened that shocked me as a game master, shocked other players, and became very meaningful for that group as a Storm Knight group. So yeah, the Aftermath, they have different ways in the book to do it. You don't have to do anything in the book like myself, but looking through this act as a whole, it shows the seedy side of Cairo. It shows the mafia mob type 20s, 30s scene. You have little nightclubs with lounge singers and old Hollywood-ish type movie things. It doesn't have a lot of the Egyptian side of things, but you don't always need that side. And that's something, and that's something that I really liked about this, because it wasn't just the same old, we're just fighting shock troopers over and over, out in the desert in pyramids. It has,
and you do fight some shock troopers.
You do, but it's not the same old like every single scene has shock troopers that you fight. Like,
we're fighting shock troopers in the bazaar again.
We're fighting, gang thugs, with Tommy guns, and they're the 1930s cars that had the little, where you step up and hang on the door, firing your Tommy guns as you go down the street and things. Again, scene 3, really loved that scene. And even scene 5, that chase and how that was brought up, both in the one that I game mastered and the one where Mike's character, the lone rocket ranger, got hypnotized and almost won it for the bad guys. So, Jay, do you have any final thoughts for the entirety of Act 1?
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, I kind of run Nile Empire a little bit more film noir than the crazy gonzo pulp action. So that Cairo really fits that feel a lot more. Mm-hmm. If anything, I think maybe this could have used, I don't know, a little bit more gangsters, because the gangster part is like really minor. Mm-hmm. It's just sort of like, yeah, go there, You could flesh it out, of course, but I would have liked to see a little bit more on the families. But then you also have, the problem is anytime you include something like that, there's the potential that the players just solve the whole problem, which we'll talk about whenever we get to Revenge of the Caradon. But yeah, overall, I really liked it.
And Mark, do you have any overall Act 1 thoughts?
I really like Act 1 as this is a nice overview of Nile Empire. I disagree with Jay on the Wise Guys thing, because Scene 2, titled Wise Guys, I played up with the mafiosos in the bar, because that speakeasy thing, I see that as that setting is everywhere, and if you get the basic elements of that setting for a speakeasy down, you can lift it up and put it any place. The Anubis Club is a speakeasy, it's just dressed up. You got suits and ties, which in my notes from it in one of the other, because we had a famous player in the stream, it didn't come up necessarily, but in the other version of it, everybody had to be in suits. They watched and they saw people coming and going in tuxedos and evening gowns and things like that. And so looking at the Adinos going, what are we going to do? And it's a different feel for it. So I liked Act 1 because it's not the average shock troopers in the bazaar or out in the desert or whatever. It's a different opening act for Nile Empire, in that you're in Cairo, and I like Jay's approach to Cairo in that it's film noir. I don't have a steeped film noir understanding to be able to give it that kind of an overview, so much as I do the much more leaning towards the Indiana Jones Anubis Club kind of thing, or was it Hotep? I can't remember the name of the club now, but it's the club from the Mummy, the club from the Mummy, the one from Raiders of the Lost Ark or whatever, Indiana Jones. That's to me, that's Cairo, and with a mob overlay just underneath the surface. And I really like that. And this act in my opinion, does a really good job. And the Dreamland, the movie studio, is a nice touch in that it's very out of place. It's not what you're expecting. Nobody's like, well, we haven't done that before. That's kind of different. And Dreamland as a scene or as a setting comes up in a number of other missions are sprinkled in Torg Eternity. So learn that one, and you can do it in a number of different places because it's really good. And I like that twist that Dreamland provides to Act 1.
Yeah, I did want to after listening, a couple of thoughts jarred my memory.
That's what always happens.
Yes, that's what
It
always
does.
happens. So at the last call at the Anubis Club, I do remember my group had a little bit more role playing as they were trying to, convince the actor to bring out the jar and talking with various people to get him. And I kind of leaned into the, hey, let's not just have this chase just pop out, almost immediately where the singer, gets grabbed and Lady Hourglass comes in. So I kind of let my group start doing stuff, and then in the Nile Empire thing is if it starts to get boring or they start taking too long to make decisions, like as long as they were, I'm going to go talk to that guy, okay, let's role play that, and as long as they were doing that was fine. And as soon as it was like, oh, who do we talk to next, and start debating what to do, that's when I spring the action to the law of action, the actual law of action of the Nile Empire comes into play. So there was a bit more. It wasn't just a jump into this chase, complete it, and then get rid of the next chase. It was a let's set up this scene, let's do some stuff in the Anubis Club, talk to some people, figure out some things going on, and now the canopic jar gets brought out. Boom, the Hooded Cobra shows up, grabs a hostage. The Storm Knight gets mind controlled. Now let's have some fun. So there's different ways to approach it.
I think the best part about that scene really is that if Hooded Cobra didn't jump up there like a psycho, it probably would have just worked for him.
Uh-huh.
Like, she was already sneaking the guy out. Like, it was already a done deal.
Right. Yeah, always have to have the villain, and if he's not monologuing, he's doing something stupid to harm himself. So next time we will that we get into fire, or continue with Fires of Ra, we'll do Act 2, Swallowed by Sand. And
here's where you get into the Indiana Jones action.
And then you get into the more traditional Nile Empire, sand, desert, pyramid type thing, structure, ancient Egypt stuff. So, do thank you for either watching or listening. Again, you can email us either your normal questions or comments, or specifically your Fires of Ra questions and stories at torgdcd@gmail.com. But until then, we hope you have fun in your own Cosmverse. Bye.